but I have only one, Bartlett Tree Experts. I rely on Bartlett to professionally assess my oaks and boxwoods and to prepare a maintenance plan within my budget. Call Corey, a certified arborist, at Bartlett Tree Experts or go to bartlett.com.
Do you love the 80s? Whether you were Team Madonna or Prince, this night is for you. Hi, I'm Kelly Diaz with Casa of Central Virginia, inviting you to Retro Rewind, our totally rad 80s party for a great cause. Join us April 11th from 6 to 10 at the Boonesboro Ruritan Club for an awesome 80s DJ, arcade games, dance floor, and more. Best of all, every ticket helps Casa volunteers advocate for children who have experienced abuse or neglect in our community. Grab your friends, moonwalk over to cvcasa.org, and get your tickets before they're gone.
When the thrill of playing ball turns into the agony of a broken windshield or car window, contact Apple Auto Glass. Your local auto glass repair shop on Allegheny Avenue in Lynchburg, Apple Auto Glass provide a professional assessment with the honesty from your neighbors, so you can get back to sharing the great moments this season.
Are you tired of the advertising rep who never takes no for an answer and always comes back well after you've said no?
Yeah, hi, it's me again.
Then visit InsaneRadioDeals.com. You can shop for advertising on your terms. That's right. Not only can you get the best deals on restaurants, retails, and experiences at InsaneRadioDeals.com, get your advertising there as well. Get packages for one, a blend, or all Virginia Talk Radio Network platforms. When you purchase your package, you'll be assigned a producer to help customize your message that gets results. Thanks to InsaneRadioDeals.com.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
April can be an exciting time. March has ended, but the madness still continues. And it continues into April. Got the Final Four for both the men and the women. And though no ACC representation on both ends, no Virginia representation on both sides for Indianapolis. But there's a lot of great things to come from Virginia schools, both from the football and basketball aspect of UVA. We watched Tony Elliott and the UVA Hoos this past year get 11 wins, a record for UVA. Never had done that before. And we watched Ryan Odom crush it in basketball. UVA could have that formula to return. And you look at Virginia Tech side of things, I know things don't look good on the basketball side. But were you really ever going to keep Neo? I do think whether or not Virginia Tech had made it into the tournament, Neo was gone either way. Virginia Tech was more than likely just a stepping stone for him. I will say the big loss for me comes with Christian Gurdick. That's a huge loss in my opinion. But we've seen Mike Young bounce back before. I do think that they've got the resources. It's going to take a lot of recruiting. The transfer portal will be open soon. A lot of players are stepping out. Like, for example, LCA native Sebastian Akins just left Wake Forest, looking for his new home. We watched Brett Decker walk out of Liberty. It wasn't really a shocker. We could see it coming, especially when he signed with an agency. And then, like we said the other day with Ed, changed his position to point guard. For those who don't know, hi, I'm TJ Wilkerson. Welcome to the Fast Lane. No Ed Lane today. He'll be back tomorrow. Because let's be honest, it's not the Fast Lane without Ed Lane. But once again, grateful for the opportunities to host this show. Great Final Four coming up in Indianapolis. UConn and Illinois, a rematch. You've got 2 number 1 seeds in Arizona and in Michigan. We'll be going over that with Josh Graham, who will be joining the show. He is right now currently in Indianapolis prepping his show, and he has been kind enough to be willing to step on to the fast lane for a short time, and we really do appreciate him doing that. So we'll have him at 5:40. With that being said, great matchups all around. You can argue, though, Duke was probably, I know UVA had a really good team, and UVA definitely had the makings to make it to the Final Four. But if you're talking about separation and who would appear into the Final Four, Duke was probably the best team to represent the ACC. And something that Ed pointed out to me yesterday, which isn't on the rundown that we posted, but I do want to throw it out there. If you look at the final seconds right after UConn scores and Duke passes it inbounds, right before the Caden Boozer turnover, they still had a timeout. I'm curious as to why maybe Shire didn't call the timeout. Was he waiting for them to get over the half-court line? Either way, you get a violation. There's still less than 5 seconds there. And UConn has to fork up a play. Not saying they won't get the shot up, and not saying Mullins wouldn't find a way to get a shot in, even if it's not from that spot that he took. Mullins is a great deep shot shooter. The theory of why they didn't take the timeout, though, despite Duke's chokings, I heavily disagree with all the John Shire talk of firing Shire. Why would you fire a coach that has tripled his wins each and every season? In the last 2 seasons, very consistent, 30-plus wins. Only lost 7 games in his 4-year career. And keep in mind, they played a lot of Quad 1 teams this year and last year. Shire made sure of it this year to play a bunch of Quad 1 teams to get tournament ready. And they only lost to Texas Tech, which, yes, blew the lead, right? You could argue Carolina is definitely a Quad 1 team, especially with Caleb Wilson. That loss hurt. Led the entire game up until the final half second of the game. Duke definitely has a problem with choking. And there's still wheels to fix with John Shire for sure. But I heavily disagree with the John Shire fire course with that. And we'll get into that with Josh Graham. I'll save all that discourse for later. But we're starting to really see NIL really change the landscape. It's already changed it. But when you have coaches retire like Tony Bennett did, or Nick Saban football-wise, they go out and they retire because you don't have a lot of
dollar bills, y'all.
So you say, you're out, right? We had Campbell, former Big South team that Liberty used to meet when they were in the Big South. Now they've gone over to another conference. But here's a coach in John Andraic who was with Florida's national team, left to go take over at Campbell, finished the season 16-18, had a meeting with Campbell's athletic department to talk about funding and how they were going to move forward with it. Let's be honest here. The baseball team's really good for Campbell. I mean, they've had a couple upsets. They beat Duke. They beat State. Campbell's got a great baseball team. And they've got a decent basketball team you could get funding for. But all of it goes to football, who hasn't really made a showing. But Campbell made it very clear on where the money was going to go. Hannah Bazemore, the athletic director, straight up said that different opinions on where the cash should go to Coach John. So he said, if you're not going to give me the funds to succeed, I'm out. I would rather be an assistant coach, which now he's back at a D1 program under Pat Kelsey with Louisville. That's where he ended up. and he was with Todd Golden and Florida's Crew the year prior. Took a head coaching job opportunity because why wouldn't you, trying to promote your career? And why not start with the mid-major? Campbell used to be a basketball powerhouse when it came to the Big South, especially when they had young star Chris Clements, who is killing it overseas now. And it makes you wonder, are we really going to see coaches now rather take an assistant gig? Not because they can't coach, not because they don't want to be a head coach, but because now you can't get the NIL funding for certain programs, or when you see that money would rather be spent in other departments, and you see there's no step to succeeding. I'm cursed to be maybe 16 and 18 next year, or worse the year prior, right? I don't get to have guys that could stay consistently like Zach Cleveland and Colin Porter here at Liberty. And I can't afford to get guys like, say, a Brett Decker Jr. or a Sebastian Akins. Why put myself through all that stress? Very good question on John and Trejic's end. All that to say, I get it. NIL definitely changes a lot of things, which is why we're not seeing Cinderella teams. The best Cinderella teams we saw this year, Iowa, an 8 seed, when they upset Florida and made it all the way to the Elite 8. That's their idea of a Cinderella team these days, single-digit seeds, right, with the 8 seed. Now, not to say that 8 seeds, you can't consider them Cinderellas, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, FAU a few years ago was a 9 seed when they made the Final Four. That's a mid-major, though. Iowa's a Big Ten powerhouse. And to compete in the Big Ten, a coach anonymously said today to On3 Sports, to even be competitive in this league, to be even successful, you need 12 million or more, or you're not going to succeed in the landscape of college. 12 million or more. A lot of these mid-majors can't do that. Our Cinderella representations were 10-seeded UVA under Coach Mox when they made the run that they did. A very great run up until the Sweet 16. Till they lost to TCU. When are we we're going to see more and more head coaches that maybe aren't strong with their respective schools. Luckily for us, I mean, Richie McKay gets what he needs for the most part. Maybe he can't afford a Brett Decker Jr., but he can go and afford another guy from an agency that doesn't cost much, like, for example, Dylan Clausen, who they picked up. More and more, though, you're starting to see coaches give up on the whole spill. They rather not take the stress. And that's my point today with the John Ondrejec news today. I will say, though, the more and more I listen to, pivoting over to football side of things, the more I listen to James Franklin, who did an interview today with On3 Sports, the more I get excited for Virginia Tech football. James Franklin stated today with Ari Wasserman. No, sorry, not with Ari Wasserman, with Andy Staples of On3. Ari Wasserman reposted it up on Twitter. By the way, if you want to see the type of content that we post, TJ_Wilkerson8 on my Twitter, or Fastlane Edlane for Eds. Same way you can reach us on most platforms if you want to grow your business on InsaneRadioDeals.com or advertise on our stations. Trust me, it works. Numbers came out today. Can't wait to release those later on, but our numbers doubled from last month, and they are looking very strong. Thank you to everyone, by the way, who streams the podcast versions of our shows on all those platforms, and for people that listen live, very appreciative of that. Trust me, it doesn't go unnoticed, and we are very appreciative to be able to get the content out there to you because there's a lot of hard workers at this station that aim to do so. So let us do the hard work for you for your business. and promote you guys on all of our stations that get a multitude of streams. I'm talking thousands. We're already on the way to 2 million or more for streaming wise total of the year. And we're in the month of April right now. That said, though, I got off track. James Franklin had this to say when talking to Andy Staples about a chip on his shoulder after being fired from Penn State.
Well, yeah, I got a huge chip on my shoulder. Kind of an unusual situation. Again, 6 games earlier, we're playing for national championship. Now, obviously, some things happened that were in my control, and I take total responsibility for that. But yeah, I got a big chip on my shoulder. Extremely motivated. Really enjoy coming to work every single day, working with a group of people that are passionate about making Virginia Tech proud. And I feel responsibility to Coach Beamer. I feel responsibility to Bud Foster. I feel responsibility to, our rector, which is the term that we use here for the president of our board or the chair of our board, and the president of the university and athletic director, and the fans in the community. So we got a lot of work to do. Most importantly, our players are driven and excited and motivated, and we got a really good core group of guys that stayed at Virginia Tech and guys that we brought from a number of other places too.
You can't help but get excited for the kind of vibe that James Franklin brings to Virginia Tech. And obviously we can go more into football as time goes on, right? And as we get closer and closer, which we will in the second segment, just not college. We'll be talking NFL draft here shortly, especially when it comes to the Commanders and the Ravens and the outlook that they could possibly go with in the first couple of rounds. And there's a lot of great players from respective schools around the area in Lynchburg and Charlottesville, from Christiansburg, Roanoke, Blacksburg, that will be prospects in the draft, like Jamari Taylor, for example, out of UVA. But we look at what James Franklin is bringing to the table. I have seen Franklin out in the open when I've gone to Blacksburg a couple of times, plenty of times in basketball games, walks around with a big smile on his face, beaming aura all around him. And you can't help but feel happy for the guy that's in a place that he wants to be in. I'm not saying he's going to have great founded success for Virginia Tech. Chances are he could have the same success he could have had at Penn State. You win the games you're supposed to for the most part, but you can't beat top 10 teams. But maybe that's good enough for Virginia Tech to win the ACC, especially with Clemson and Florida State taking a downward spiral. Duke more than likely won't be a problem this year. UVA, they've picked up a lot of great prospects. Commonwealth Clash will probably be way more fun this year. And you have a decent schedule. Easy non-conference as far. You've got Maryland on the road right before you go into conference play. You got a tough ACC road schedule at Miami, at Clemson. But all that to say is, the more you hear James Franklin talk, the more I get excited. I don't know about you, but you can tag us at TJ_Wilkerson8 when we return here into the fast lane. We're going to talk NFL draft, look at the prospects for the first round, including, speaking of a team that we don't cover, but important to note, the Raiders took a chance on Kirk Cousins. What this could mean for, let's be honest, when they draft Fernando Mendoza. We'll talk about all that and more when we come back. Don't go anywhere. This is the Fast Lane on 93.3 FM, 1320 AM Lynchburg, and the VTRN Sports app.
We are making it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years with the best selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Plus 900 pre-owned vehicles all in one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owners. loaner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with finance options for every budget. 900 used vehicles in stock now. More than any other dealer in the area. Hurry in for straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Why wait? Make it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER-1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Spring's here, finally. So visit Leesville Landscape Supplies for a slam dunk on your next home or business landscape project. Get the region's best mulch, plus decorative stone, propane, block, and hardscape materials, routine lawn care. Leesville Landscape Supplies has grass seed, fertilizer, straw, and topsoil, even hardwood mulch, dyed mulch, pine mulch, gravel, and sand. Start your spring project at Leesville Landscape Supplies at the corner of Water Lake and Leesville Road in Lynchburg, and pick there or have it delivered. Search 24/7 at LeesvilleLandscapes.com. When the thrill of playing ball turns into the agony of a broken windshield or car window, contact Apple Auto Glass. Your local auto glass repair shop on Allegheny Avenue in Lynchburg. Apple Auto Glass provide a professional assessment with the honesty from your neighbors, so you can get back to sharing the great moments this season. Lunchtime just got an upgrade. Stop by Macadoo's for our $8.95 weekday special and grab a legendary sandwich at an unbeatable price. Choose from your favorite classics, the Coney Island, Betty Bop, Ragtime, or Stogie. Classic sandwiches packed with savory meats and flavors in between fresh bread. Make it a meal by pairing your sandwich with a sidekick, a warm cup of soup, or crispy chips. Great food, cozy vibes, and the best deal in town.
It's time to share great food and fun. Just to be there, the only one. Just to be there at Macadoo's.
We'll see you at the Do's.
Do you love the 80s? Whether you were Team Madonna or Prince, this night is for you. Hi, I'm Kelly Diaz with Casa of Central Virginia, inviting you to Retro Rewind, our totally rad 80s party for a great cause. Join us April 11th from 6 to 10 at the Boonesboro Ruritan Club for an awesome 80s DJ, arcade games, dance floor, and more. Best of all, every ticket helps Casa volunteers advocate for children who have experienced abuse or neglect in our community. Grab your friends, moonwalk over to cvcasa.org, and get your tickets before they're gone.
When you walk into Haley's, you see the size and selection of a big box store. Over 19,000 square feet of appliances and mattresses. Leading appliances like KitchenAid, Whirlpool, Maytag, Genair, Speed Queen, GE, and Monogram. And mattresses like Sealy, Serta, and Tempur-Pedic. So what's the difference? A family, locally owned business. And a staff committed to servicing you over the entire life of the product. That means before, during, and well after your purchase. Visit Haley's today, just off Ward Road in Lynchburg. Haley's, quality that counts.
VTRN Sports, your companion at work, at home, and in your car. VTRN Sports. Download our app and take us everywhere.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Welcome back into the Fast Lane here on 93.3 FM, 1320 AM Lynchburg, and the VTRN Sports app on Virginia Talk Radio Network, now powered by ESPN Radio. We are officially 3 weeks out from the NFL draft. Exciting time. Exciting time. A lot of players who have worked for this moment finally get to see their dreams come true of being in the pros. Question is, who fits where? And all the time, sometimes you don't always get the guy that ends up fitting well, especially in first round picks. And you look at this NFL draft class, is it the flashiest for the most part? I think you've got a lot of flashy picks here. I think it's loaded in most positions, not quarterback, because there's only one quarterback deemed worthy right now to even go first round. A year ago, this QB class was said to be extremely loaded. When people were high on Carson Beck, when people were high on Drew Allard, when people were high on Cade Klubnik, even high on Ty Simpson in the early start of the season. Now, it's a different story. Only quarterback deemed worthy of going first round in a lot of mocks. And maybe you can have another quarterback squeaked in late first round, depending on how teams feel. Like, the Cardinals, for example, when you dropped Kyler Murray, who's now a Viking. If the Cardinals feel like maybe a Ty Simpson isn't going to be there when it's their turn to pick in the second round, do you pick him up, try and trade up and pick him in the first round? Do you feel confident doing that? Do you stick with former NC State quarterback in Jacoby Brissett? These are the kind of questions. And then you look at the teams that we do cover here locally with the Washington Commanders, for example. It's no secret when you listen to guys like Lake Lewis Jr., who you can hear on the morning warm-up every week with Trey Lyle and Ty Tracy. Always great insight from Lake Lewis. We bring Seawall here on the show every Monday, and she brought in her insight. In fact, she brought in an interesting nugget on the show Monday. For those who didn't hear, you can listen to it on wherever you listen to podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so forth. But on covering the Commonwealth with Ed on Monday, Seawall had this to say when asked, who are the Commanders really looking at to draft with the 7th overall pick? Do they have an idea?
They don't know. Not today. Like he said, like Adam Peters said to us this afternoon, March 30th, we don't know. Like, he doesn't know, right? And even if he did, he probably wouldn't tell us. But at the same token, I do know that there's strong desire to draft Carnell Tate by the New Orleans Saints, that pick number 8. So let's see. There's a lot to like about Carnell Tate. I absolutely, after seeing him at Ohio State Pro Day, I absolutely understand why he's been mocked to the Commanders at pick 7. But I definitely think still it's a lot to do with who's the best player available on the board, but really on their board.
It would be an interesting pick. I mean, if you look at the Commanders, you lose Deebo Samuel, right? You haven't picked him back up. And you look at the wide receiver depth that they have, it's not much right now with the Commanders on depth. And it makes you wonder if Carnell Tate is available. If you're the Commanders and maybe you don't feel as confident with the kind of wide receiver class that's here, you look at the type of wide receivers that can be taken in the first round. Well, you've got Carnell Tate, right? But Jordan Tyson without the injuries. I'm huge on Mekhi Lemon. A lot of people are worried about the injuries there as well. A lot of people are starting to have KC Concepcion as not a first rounder. And it's because of the kind of quarterback play that A&M had. So you look at that. Who could Washington go and get? Do you wait for Amar Cooper Jr.? Because chances are, I truly think that Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon all gone first round. There's a chance that KC Concepcion could be gone as well. And there's thoughts that even Chris Bell could shoot up boards. Maybe not first round material for a lot of people, but a lot of people are saying he could shoot up boards. Maybe early second round. So if you're Washington and you don't feel as satisfied with, and remember, Washington doesn't have a second round pick either. Personally, I'd go defense. And I'll tell you why if I'm Washington. The DB class is not as strong as it has been other years. With that 7th pick right there, you could go Mansour, Delane, and truthfully, I think why not? You don't have Marshawn Lattimore anymore. He's gone from the team, and he wasn't doing you any favors either. And then you look elsewhere as well, but Jonathan Jones is gone as well. Washington, in the last couple of years, when it came to the pass game, was horrendous. And Lake Lewis has said it to Trey a couple of times on the morning warm-up. Defense has been a focus for Washington. You also need to look at O-line here for Jaden Daniels. Otherwise, Jaden Daniels is going to be looking for a stretcher every game if you don't fix that O-line. You re-signed Laramie Tunsil. That was an important re-sign, a big re-sign that you had to have. And they've got some moving pieces around. You're still looking for a center in the future. You're looking for an inside lineman. Especially if you want to start developing more of a run game, you want to develop the inside line core. If I'm the Commanders, I'd go DB. But I also feel like if David Bailey is there, edge out of Texas Tech, Saints may be looking at him. If Saints could maybe jump up for him potentially, or maybe they feel more confident in getting Jeremiah Love to replace sooner or later Alvin Kamara, right? Jeremiah Love deemed as the only running back to look at. My question is, I get the Ruben Bain. I get the Ruben Bain discourse with the short arms, but he's shown himself tremendously. One of the top dominating forces of a really good Miami defense. Look at what they held to Ohio State. One of the biggest offensive powerhouses in college football. Look at what they did to A&M. Running circles around most SEC defenses. And you hold them to what, 3 points in the college football playoff? You don't want a guy like Ruben Bain? That was a big part of that reason? Nah, come on now. The short arms don't scare you. That shouldn't. Why wouldn't you? If I'm Washington, defense is definitely a target for me. I feel like you could definitely get receivers more down the line, especially in the third round. There's a lot to like. I look at Malachi Fields, for example, out of Notre Dame. That's a big steal you could get in the third round, and he could be available. Why wouldn't you take that risk? Why wouldn't you take that opportunity? Especially if now maybe you get the best player off the board. Maybe you do take a chance to get Jeremiah Love and have an outstanding running back, especially knowing the Chiefs aren't going to get him, even though they're 2 spots behind. They're not going to jump up and try and get him. They just signed Kenneth Walker. They're probably looking defense as well because that's where the Chiefs are lacking. I do think, though, before we move on here, because we will be getting Josh Graham on the show here very shortly to talk about Final Four and other factors in college basketball, which I'm really excited about. Let's not panic over Fernando Mendoza because the Raiders signed Kirk Cousins. And I'm not saying they aren't going to draft Fernando Mendoza. They clearly are. This is as clear as of number one as it's been for most years. Maybe 3 years ago 3-4 years ago, you didn't know who the number one overall pick was going to be because it bounced around between Aiden Hutchinson and the defensive end for the Jaguars, whose name has slipped my mind all of a sudden. It went back and forth on the discourse there. But I think this is a great move by the Raiders to get Kirk Cousins. You don't want to throw Fernando Mendoza like a deer in the headlights out there. Using Kirk Cousins as QB competition, as a way to train him. Kirk Cousins, hey, look, he hasn't won anything significantly, but he's been in the league for a while, and you want a kind of guy that's stayed in the league, has put up great stats to be your trainer. I truly believe that. I truly, truly believe that. I'm excited for the NFL draft 3 weeks from now. I'm excited to talk more about it. Spoke with Matt Miller in a press conference with him about it, talking about Jamari Taylor, who he feels like is the type of guy that can be a rotational back. Can't be a starting back, but he can be the kind of guy that can take a couple of carries, especially as a power back. He was huge on him. That's why he has him going 5th round and the 5th running back taken in this draft. Because outside of the Notre Dame boys, you got Nick Singleton out of Penn State that you could look at. And then after that, it's Jamari Taylor out of UVA. Running backs aren't going to be as a significant piece in this draft, kind of like quarterback, but they will be taken big time in the later rounds. You know what else is going to be big time? Josh Graham here of Westwood One, and we're going to have him joining the show right after our break to talk Final Four. He is in Indianapolis right now, boots on the ground, ready to bring coverage for his show and partner with Westwood One, who we have partnered with to play you the Final Four on all of our stations. That's right. The Final Four will be playing on all of our stations. WIQO here on VTRN's 93.3 FM, even on Classic Rewind. You don't want to miss out on that. Stay tuned. Josh Graham, Westwood One, when we come back. This is the Fast Lane.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Volkswagen. Get ready to fall head over heels for the perfect VW SUV. One size doesn't fit all, though, and that's why Volkswagen has an SUV for everyone. From the compact and affordable Volkswagen Taos to the tech-packed Tiguan and the spacious Volkswagen Atlas. No matter which one fits your lifestyle, you'll love the comfort, performance, and safety. Stop by Terry Volkswagen on Forest Road in Lynchburg or check us out online at terryvw.com. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
Spring's here, finally. So visit Leesville Landscape Supplies for a slam dunk on your next home or business landscape project. Get the region's best mulch, plus decorative stone, propane, block, and hardscape materials for routine lawn care. Leesville Landscape Supplies has grass seed, fertilizer, straw, and topsoil, even hardwood mulch, dyed mulch, pine mulch, gravel, and sand. Start your spring project at Leesville Landscape Supplies at the corner of Water Lake and Leesville Road in Lynchburg. And pick there or have it delivered. Search 24/7 at LeesvilleLandscapes.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
It is that time as we begin to approach the end of March Madness. We are in the month of April now, and we are about to approach the Final Four for both the men's and the women's games, which you'll be listening to here on 93.3 FM Lynchburg and the VTRN Sports app, thanks to our partners at Westwood One. Final Four for the men taking place at Indianapolis, and we have somebody that is joining us here today that I am proud to have on the show. He just joined the national lineup a couple months ago, as a matter of fact, back in January. Got his own national show after being in the Triad of North Carolina for 7 years, leading the #1 show. And he'll be boots on the ground on site for the Final Four. We got Josh Graham joining us here on the Fast Lane. First off, Josh, how are you doing? And what a Final Four this looks like. I know there are some people disappointed Duke's not in it. Brackets are busted with that. People were thinking Houston were going to make it. I know you had Houston going all the way. How are you doing outside of maybe a busted bracket?
Well, I always have a busted bracket, so I never really put too much stock in that. It's good to be with you, by the way, TJ. It's you look at it, and I see a lot of reasons to think. I see a lot of reasons to think that this Final Four is very special in that you have two programs with passionate fan bases that haven't been to the Final Four in over 2 decades. Arizona since 2001, when Gilbert Arenas and Richard Jefferson were falling to the Duke Blue Devils in that 0-1 title game. And 2005, it was Illinois with Dee Brown and with Deron Williams. They haven't been since then, 21 years ago, when they fell to another North Carolina blue blood, Roy Williams, cutting down that for the first of 3 times 21 years ago. So you have that, but then you also have big national brands too, such as Michigan, that looks to win its second national championship. It's crazy to think that 1989 is the only title that they ever won in Ann Arbor. They've had so many opportunities to win again since then. This is their 5th Final Four trip since that 89 title. The Fab Five falling in back-to-back national championships in 92 and 93. And then you have the 2013 championship game that Louisville wins with Rick Pitino that was later vacated. And nobody was beating Villanova in 2018 as they dominated on their way to beating Franz Wagner and Jordan Poole, that Michigan unit in 2018. So this is the first trip since 2018 for Michigan. UConn, it's old hat. They're looking to win their third national title in 4 years, one of the more dominant runs we've seen in recent memory. So I see a fabulous Final Four with a ton of storylines attached to it.
Absolutely. Dan Hurley could get his third title, like you said, in 4 years. Playing rematch against Illinois with guys like Stojakovic, son of a NBA player, was at Cal last year. I remember he dominated the ACC tournament, even though Cal went out in the second round. The only player I've seen really in conference tournaments that gets bounced out second round and still first team all ACC tournament. And he's been crazy on this Illinois team. UConn defeated Illinois by double digits the last time they faced in the regular season. What's different about this Illinois team, you feel like, that they can approach UConn differently?
I think a lot's different. Keaton Wagler wasn't Keaton Wagler yet. And Keaton Wagler going to be a top 10 pick, overlooked in the scouting process, former Kansas Player of the Year that K-State and the Jayhawks had no interest in. His only high major offers, I believe, were Minnesota and Illinois. Goes to play for Brad Underwood, and you're talking about a 6'6" guard that's shooting over 40% from three. He wasn't much of a factor. He wasn't really he didn't really have the confidence. He didn't really have the playing time at that point in the season since it was so early. But also, you know, Terrace Reed on the UConn end wasn't really Terrace Reed yet either. He had, I think, in that game, his season low in points and season low in minutes. Got in foul trouble, and UConn was still able to win the game, as you mentioned, by double digits. So I don't know how much there really is to pull from that game, just because there is so much that's changed about both teams since then.
When you look at this Michigan-Arizona games, right, Michigan was outside of Florida, the only other number one seed where you were either all in with them, it felt like. They've got tons of size, especially in the paint. When people go inside, it feels like you're going against the Great Wall of China with all the 6'9" forwards, the 7'2" center they have. And Arizona's quite the same way when it comes to size inside the paint. How much could the size matchup factor into this game for these two teams? We'll start there.
While Arizona has height, I don't think when you look at this Arizona team, the first place you go is talking about their bigs. You think about their Big 12 Player of the Year in Jaden Bradley. You have a top 10 pick, potentially, lottery pick, certainly, in Braden Burries, who is a guard/wing type. Those are the two best players on this team. And then you have the depth in the post. Michigan's a little inverted in that. Michigan, when you think of them first, you think of Yaxel Lindenborg, you think of Mo Johnson and 7-foot Adi Mara. Like that's where you begin. And I can't help but think how important the setting is going to be in this matchup. Playing in a football stadium, it tends to affect shooters with sight lines more than it affects bigs. And I think that plays a little bit to Michigan's advantage. Older teams generally adjust better. Other than Bradley, Arizona's best players, they're super young. Burries is a freshman. So, I mean, Coapi, a freshman. Karchenkov, these are all freshman teenagers. Michigan starters, 4 of the 5 are upperclassmen, and the exception's a sophomore. Dusty May, he led a team to the Final Four before it was with Florida Atlantic a few years ago. Tommy Lloyd hasn't, but he was with Mark Few for a few ZAG Final Four appearances in 2017 and 2021. So I think the Wolverines, this is a game that's going to be decided in the margins. And it looks like a fascinating game where both teams are playing awesome. Michigan, while Arizona's won all their games by an average of 20 points per game per win, Michigan's won their games by an average of 22 points per win. So I think if I were giving a side an edge as of right now, it's marginal, it's slight. I would give it to Michigan.
One guy that has been in the Carolinas and transferred to Michigan, Elliot Cadeau. What have you seen as far as different in his game? What do you feel like he has the confidence now since he's gone to Michigan and left Carolina? How much of a factor do you feel like he'll play with Michigan?
I just think at North Carolina, throughout Dean Smith's tenure and then with Roy Williams and now Hubert Davis, all of which are extensions of Dean, I think there has always been this emphasis on your point guard performance as like, this is the guy that you need to play. There's a large amount of responsibility and pressure that goes along with being the point guard at North Carolina that I don't think you get other places. And with him going to Michigan, I think there's less that's put on his shoulders because of the amount of support they have around him and how they've constructed this roster, which is different than the way that Hubert Davis constructed his rosters at North Carolina. And with less pressure, I think you've seen improved performance for Elliott. In fact, I know he has. I mean, he's averaging double-digit points a game, and the assist numbers are still pretty much similar, but you've seen the turnover numbers go down, which is the most important thing. Now, there are still times where Elliott is a little bit erratic, like we saw in games with him at North Carolina, but those have been fewer and far between. He has been improved, and this is something we used to accept. Hey, guys, you should stick around in school for 4 years. You're going to be a much different player as an upperclassman than you are when you were a freshman or an underclassman. And Cadeau is progressing. He's getting better, but also he's being put in a different situation that I think he has responded better to.
Josh Graham of Westwood One joining the show today. He'll be, like we said, on site for the Final Four. Josh, before we pivot into a couple of more questions here, what are you looking forward to the most in the Final Four? What are you hoping to see on site?
Oh, it's Arizona, Michigan. That's the game. This sets up to be one of the more highly awaited semifinal matchups that we've seen. And then to localize it to the ACC footprint of which you guys are located in, it's seeing what happens with the North Carolina opening as a result of the Michigan-Arizona result, because the losing coach this game is probably immediately going to be contacted by North Carolina, and it'll be interesting to see with Dusty May and Tommy Lloyd potentially how they, if North Carolina puts full court press on them, how they respond. And it seems that those are the two candidates in the college ranks they like a lot, and then there's Billy Donovan in the pro ranks too. And one of those coaches has to lose on Saturday night, which means North Carolina might start to get busy as early as Sunday.
Let's say Arizona wins this game, right? They go all the way to the national championship. Do you still see Tommy Lloyd departing from Arizona like Roy Williams did years ago with Kansas to go to Carolina?
If they win a national championship, you're saying?
Yeah, if they win, do you think Tommy Lloyd still has a high chance to leave?
Well, but that's the difference between and we'll never know the answer between this and what happened with Roy Williams in this hypothetical, because Roy lost to Syracuse in 2003.
Yeah.
And I just feel that if your coach wins a national championship, that you have so much leverage now within the school. It becomes like a state of pride for the university to be like, whatever you want, whatever you ask for, we're going to give you. We're not going to let you leave, so to speak, after you win a national title. So I think, and also, if you win the national championship, there's some like, hey, you've reached the summit. Why would you want to just immediately leave the summit to go somewhere else after you achieve what ultimately you set out to? So I think it'd be very difficult to pry a coach away after they win a national championship. But if they lose like Roy did in 2003 or in the national semifinal this Saturday, I think that's a different conversation. And I think North Carolina has a lot, obviously, that potential suitors would be interested in.
As Tommy Lloyd's comments in the press conference recently, like yesterday when they asked him about it, and he just said, no, it's just a distraction and everything. Do you feel like maybe he's just Will Wading, like Will Wade did with Shelby Swanson at the ACC tournament, but in a nicer way almost?
No, I don't think so. I think there's no, because here's the thing. Like Will Wade, what he did a year ago, the way that he handled this at McNeese when he was leaving was admirable. Like not what he did in the last few weeks where clearly he lied. And that's what, he has a track record. That's what he did. He lied.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you can convince anyone otherwise. But a year ago, what he deserved points with is he was asked about the NC State opportunity, and he said it out loud. Yeah, I've been talking to NC State, and guess what? I've been telling my players about it too, and they know that just like them, coaches have opportunities to potentially progress and go somewhere else. So honesty, I think, does go a long way. When it comes to the Final Four, though, there is no value in, if you are planning to stay at your school. Let's say Tommy Lloyd isn't going to leave, wants to stay no matter what. There's no value in telling the truth and saying that, because if you did want to leave, you don't want to lie. You don't want to say something that makes you look bad and people go back on, kind of like with the Shelby Swanson situation. But number two, if you're wanting to get the most out of your school, if you want to leverage it into getting something from your administration, well, why would it benefit you at all to say that you're coming back? Because that kind of destroys some of the leverage that you otherwise would have with your own university to get more things out of it. So he's not going to say he's coming back regardless on whether or not he is coming back until it behooves him to do so, and it doesn't right now.
Absolutely. And I think he's doing a good job deflecting, in all honesty, just keeping the focus on the big game. Arizona and Michigan, that's obviously the big game. We've talked a little bit about UConn and Illinois. Let's talk about pivoting to a team with Josh Graham of Westwood One onto the Duke Blue Devils. Now, it feels like they always have the team to get there. You know, last year they had all 5 of their starters get drafted in the NBA. Lost to Houston in the final 8 minutes after only getting 1 field goal. Same situation again with UConn this past weekend. Led the whole game, and then Mullins makes the big 3 to take the win away after UConn made a comeback, and Duke only gets, 2 field goals in 6 minutes? Please correct me if I'm wrong. But it feels like it's become the Jon Scheyer trope, and I hate the whole, should Jon Scheyer be fired? No, I don't think he should be fired at all. I think stuff like this happens, and I do think he can get over the trope, but I do want to get your opinion on it because you've seen the Blue Devils more than I have. You've seen Jon Scheyer coach in person and on TV more than I have. What do you feel like, John, about the Jon Scheyer trope, and when do you think he'll finally get over it?
Oh, we don't know the answer to that. I mean, This is the beauty of, and also the detriment of, March Madness. And I felt this way about Tony Bennett for all the years that he fell short in the NCAA tournament before ultimately winning in 2019, that we've been brainwashed with college basketball into thinking the quality of these coaches should be derived by how you do in a single elimination tournament that requires you to win 6 in a row in order to win it all. The reality with Jon Scheyer is that any fan base in America would trade for the consistency and the success that Duke has had under Jon Scheyer's leadership. Jon Scheyer's won more games than any coach in his first 4 seasons as a D1 head coach has won. That's first place to start. And the last couple of years, he's lost 7 games combined. 7 games in 2 years. And it requires an Avengers movie in order for him to lose. Like, just think of the last couple where, okay, all the things that needed to break against Duke in order to lose the UConn, or break against Duke to lose the most recent loss after that against North Carolina in Chapel Hill, or being up 17 against Texas Tech and not being able to finish that. And you might say, well, they blew a 17-point lead in that game against Texas Tech, and they blew a 19-point lead against UConn, and they blew a lead against Houston in the Final Four a year ago. Yeah, these are things that fall in coaching, sure, but to say that Duke doesn't execute well in late game situations when they were 9-3 this year in games decided by 7 points or fewer, including Sunday's game, I just don't buy that either. And I think that it's true that it's hard to win in this tournament. And Mike Krzyzewski, when he went to his first Final Four in 2000 or in 1986, it started a run of coach going to the Final Four 4 times in 5 years, and he didn't win the title in any of those seasons. It wasn't until 1991 that he broke through. With Dean Smith, before the tournament expanded to 64 and 85. Like, he was at North Carolina for multiple decades before one of the 5 greatest college basketball teams ever finally broke through in 1982. And that required Fred Brown to have a ridiculous, stupid pass at the end of the game, throwing away to Worthy in order to clinch that win. So, like, when we're talking about the greatest coaches ever, and I'm not saying you're doing this, let's not pretend that this is something abnormal, that coaches have had difficulty getting over that hump. And the reality is, if it was like the NBA where you had best of 7 series, he probably already wins a title by now. But since it is winning 6 in a row in a win or die tournament, you're going to have some random results and weird things happen, such as Duke losing games like this. It's what we love about March, but also it's what we need to recognize in the context when evaluating coaches.
Josh Graham of Westwood One joining. Josh, 2 more questions here for you. I want to pivot to Justin Gainey's hiring. What is your feelings and thoughts on another NC State coach, this time a former player from the 2000s, stepping up to the plate to hopefully get State back on track? What are your thoughts on the Gainey hire? I know you were huge. You were pushing for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that he's an NC State guy. He's an associate head coach, seemed to be potentially a coach in waiting for a program that's been in the Elite Eight 3 straight years now. So he's qualified in that regard. He understands NC State, which Will Wade didn't. And most people who come from the outside might not understand the dynamic of having 3 ACC schools in a 1-hour periphery, and the dynamics with fans and all of that with Duke and Carolina. There's a lot there to understand that's different about NC State. So having an alum helps there as well. And he's been an outstanding recruiter. I mean, he helped save Sean Miller's job towards the end of his run at Arizona too. So he's been at top schools like Arizona and Tennessee, and he's one of yours, especially given the context of how Will Wade left. It made more sense to go to a guy like this, but I would have done it a year ago. I think it's a home run hire for NC State.
Josh Graham, last question for you, because we know you've got to get moving. You've got a book schedule. And by the way, folks, while you're listening to the show, be sure to catch Josh Graham with his Westwood One national show. If you don't have it playing at your local radio stations, you can get it on the Westwood One app, or he live streams on Twitter with his show. And he's got a great producer in Will Dalton on the weekends, who was also his producer back at WSJS. Trust me, it's the kind of content you want to hear, and it's the kind of insight you need to hear. So go ahead and shamelessly promote Josh Graham's show here, 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., Wednesdays, Thursday, Fridays, 4 to 7 p.m., Saturday and Sunday. Josh, before we let you go and get to your work in Indianapolis, UVA with Ryan Odom seem to be on track. So far, no transfers as of right now announced in the portal. That'll probably change. But you look at UVA and you look at Virginia Tech, which are our local teams for the ACC. What do you see Ryan Odom staying consistent at UVA? And when you look at Mike Young and VT, how can the Hokies get back on track to being once ACC champs to now scratching the barrel, losing guys like Neo and Christian Gerdak yesterday in the portal?
Well, I think we're seeing Virginia Tech head in the right direction once they started putting some resources behind Mike Young. They didn't before, and I appreciate recognition from administration, not cutting a good coach loose who won an ACC tournament championship for you when you haven't adequately supported him the way you needed to. Like, it is crazy to think that there are only 2 active head coaches in the ACC that could say they've won an ACC championship. It's John Shire and Mike Young. That's the list. There's nobody else among the active head coaches in this league that could say they've won an ACC title. And then you look at Ryan Odom. He had a fabulous first year. There's no reason to believe that's going to slow down. And you're right. You should probably expect some turnover in the portal, but that's normal. That's okay. When you have 9 guys in your rotation that play double-figure minutes for you, and they're all newcomers from a year ago. So hopefully you're able to keep some of them in place, but naturally you're going to have to turn over again. And that's Ryan Odom has demonstrated an ability to evaluate talent in the portal. And that's one of the most important traits a coach can have nowadays, is be able to do that both on the international and domestic front. So I think Virginia fans should be very happy with what they have with Ryan Odom.
Absolutely. We're happy to have him here in Virginia, and we're always happy to have Josh Graham here on the Fast Lane. Josh, thank you for joining us and giving us some time, man, and look forward to seeing your coverage for the Final Four this upcoming weekend, man.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you so much. That's all from us here on the Fast Lane. Now on to Freddie and Harry. Getting ready to be in progress. We'll see you tomorrow.
3 and your list of old technology that we miss.
There was a certain level of courage that you had to perform, an act that you had to do if you wanted to go and take your game literally to the next level.
It's all be good.
So with that being said, I'm going with home phone. The amount of courage it took to call that girl's house, knowing that there's a good chance that her daddy's going to